大家好，一个美国的媒体人说，咱们中国的学生基本上没有助学贷款，因为学费太便宜了。
They don't have a $2 trillion student debt nightmare like we do.
The notion of a kid graduating with $40,000 of debt seems mind-blowing to me. But that's normal in the States. I think it's like 60, 70% are $500 away from a disaster where they can't afford it. How are the schools paid for in China? I mean, is that state paid for, or does the person have to cover the cost of schools?
People need to cover the cost. There are scholarships and grants, just like in the United States, and there are a lot of them, especially for, excellent students, especially for graduate students. However, school is just not that expensive. Some of the universities are only a couple thousand RMB, like $400 tuition for the entire year. So,
Really?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you go to some of the better schools, they can be 6,000 RMB for a semester, which is like $900. Like, that's elite, basically. But it's super affordable. There's no such thing as student debt. There's no one goes into debt. Also, Chinese are super savers. You can just look up UN statistics. Most Chinese adults save 40% of their income. So most parents, when they send their kids to school, they just pay for everything. And the kid just gets out. There's no debt at all. They don't have a $2 trillion student debt nightmare like we do.
You have no idea how angering that is. And I don't mean that from the stand, because look, I remember not just school debt, medical debt too. I remember being in Egypt. I was smoking a cigarette with a guy. I was in a doctor's office, and we were smoking a cigarette. And he turns to me, and I didn't realize he was German. And he says, "How much did you pay for this medical thing?" And I told him. He says, "My government covers this." And it's like, I don't know if Americans know this, but we've been brainwashed in many respects to believe that, well, you're supposed to cover that stuff. That shouldn't be something that the government helps cover, or at the very least help manages in regards to your expenses. It's almost as if they expect you to go into debt for that stuff. I don't know. It's just amazing. Like the stuff that we accept here is just very strange in comparison to other countries that don't seem to have those issues, or for the most part don't have to effectively, the notion of a kid graduating with $40,000 of debt seems mind-blowing to me. But that's normal in the States. And then it's like in China, despite the fact that they have this seemingly higher level of education, especially if you're looking at the AI, comp sci, science, etc. You're looking at the number of students that are in these schools. It's a higher level of education, and yet they get out without any debt. That's astonishing. How about medical bills? How is medicine and those type of things practiced in China? Is there also, the reason I'm asking this, because the argument that is being made seemingly is that this is a way for debt alleviation. This is a way that policy can influence, especially your latest book, policy can influence how much money people have in their pockets, how much money they spend on the various items, how much they can save, as opposed to having, I think most Americans, I think it's like 60, 70% are $500 away from a disaster where they can't afford it. Wow, that's amazing. How did China do this? Like, how was it able to keep inflation low and keep school costs low? I would imagine medical bills low, while also dealing with the economic betterment of its population. Is it a government policy issue, or was there something else going on?
The inside of the questions that you asked are like 100 other questions. So I'm going to try to just cover the basics. Okay, so in China, the economy is a combination of, capital exists. For example, there is the Shanghai Stock Exchange. Right. But there's also what we call the commanding heights of the economy, which are the critical inputs for the way that the economy works. And those are like telecommunications, are mostly controlled by the government. They're called state-owned enterprises, or what we would call utilities, which we used to have in the United States. And so electricity controlled mostly by SOEs, state-owned enterprises. A lot of mining is covered by SOEs. Just so many different aspects. So when you're in your home, for example, I go turn on the water, it's run by the state. I turn on the electricity, it's run by the state. So those are really inexpensive. Electricity is about half the cost in the United States. Water is about a sixth the cost. Telecommunication is less than a tenth of the cost. So whatever you're paying for your phone bill, I pay considerably less. I think I pay 50 RMB, or 100 RMB, which is like $10 or something a month. So the electricity, the water, the minerals, the telecommunications, the logistics and infrastructure, it's all owned by the state. They're all much more affordable. So, that's why inflation is low, because the state manages all of the inputs for the market economy. Then there's a thriving market economy. We have KFC and McDonald's and Pizza Hut and Starbucks. And then, of course, Chinese brands that are like that. We have like 600 Hilton hotels plus Chinese hotels. And so there's market economy working too. But the market economy sits on top of the state-owned enterprises, which provide all of these affordable inputs. So, also it's this is another thing that's going to blow your mind. 93% of Chinese adults own their own home. So, it's like 60% or 65% in the United States.
93% own their own
And then
home.
80% of those don't have a mortgage at all. So they don't make a payment. There's no rent, there's no house payment, and there's no property taxes. So if a person has a job and owns a home, which is pretty much everybody, then all they have to do is, save their money, and the water is affordable, electricity is affordable, everything is made here, so it's affordable. Inflation is low because of the way the economy is run and the state managing certain kinds of enterprises. But you did mention something earlier about medicine. China does not, I just want to, for the record, China does not have universal healthcare. It has a different system. It has workers' healthcare. So 98% of people are covered, but it's through your employer and if you don't have an employer, there are other ways to get it also through the state and get it subsidized. And then there is a slight co-payment. But for example, if I have the horrible flu or whatever, I go to the hospital, probably my copay after everything, I pay like 5 RMB, which is like 80 cents or something. So there is a cost. And if you have something really rare, like some kind of cancer that no one's ever heard of, you might actually have very expensive bills. But 90%, 95% of all of the reasons you will go to the hospital cost almost nothing. My wife had pneumonia last winter. She was hospitalized in a hospital bed, living there for 2 weeks. She came out after everything. It's like $100.
Dude,
but it's not universal healthcare. It's just a different system.
I know, but 90-something% covered. It's astonishing. I mean, even some places in Europe don't have universal healthcare. I mean, like, I understand what you mean. It's the overwhelming majority, like upwards of over 90% are covered, and then the state comes in to deal with the other percentage.
There's also other systems where you live in that poor village that I mentioned, Pishan, for example. They have a clinic there, so that's free, and that nurses and doctors go there and get on certain days and things and give free treatments. And if they need a real hospital, they can go to the city Hotan, which is nearby, and then they can get a better treatment. So there are doctors providing for those other 2 or 3% that are missed by the national health care scheme, but a lot of that is just like local nurses and clinics and stuff to make up for the coverage.
That is amazing. That's amazing. That's mind blowing. Those are not things that Americans know. It's just not. I mean, wow.
还说咱们国家的电力啊等公共设施特别便宜，咱们国家没有房产税，看病特别便宜，不至于像美国那样动不动就掉入斩杀线。在美国3000美元，也就是21000多人民币，就能让70%的美国人掉入斩杀线。这个视频真的拍得特别好，我仔细看了3遍。越来越多的欧美人啊明白咱们国家的好了。在美国，像奥巴马这么优秀的人，到40多岁才还完助学贷款，然后房子买了以后没有其他费用，不像美国有房产税，你只要不还房产税，马上就把你赶出家门，把你房子拍卖了。自有房屋拥有率在咱们国家能达到 96%， 他说的是 93% 啊，不管是 96% 也好，还是 93% 也好，咱们国家自有房屋拥有率比美国高多了，美国只有 60%到70%， 并且他们每年还要交 1% 到 3% 的房产税，平均按 2% 算，也就是说一个美国人只要50年就要把自己的房子再买一遍，并且物业费、电费、水费、网费，这样你任何一个项目不交都可以把你房子拍卖了。现在越来越多的美国人明白这个道理了，慢慢的他们就会发现是咱们的制度和他们的制度不一样。我相信最多有10年以内会有大量的欧美人到咱们国家来生活看病的。大家肯定也刷到过很多欧美人到咱们国内看病，就是因为即使加上机票啊，性价比也太高了。所以即使咱们国内这几年经济比较低迷，但是普通老百姓还能过得下去，不像美国人稍不留神就跌入斩杀线了。大家有什么想法咱们在评论区讨论。好嘞，谢谢。